Hey guys, so today we're going to talk about how much does a new deck cost. You're planning a deck project and you have lots of ideas and you want to know kind of a budget range. So today we're going to go through that and talk about a few things that influence the cost of your deck project. So the first thing to think about with deck projects is, are you going to build your deck out of wood or composite? Those are really that's the first split in the fork in the road, if you will, in decision making on your deck project. Wood is very traditional. I'm sure you know what that looks like. It's made out of treated lumber. And so a wood deck is much more inexpensive than a composite deck. But one thing to kind of think about with that is the maintenance that it requires. A wood deck should be stained every couple of years. Which you add up the cost of staining and treating the deck over time, and the long-term maintenance costs will far exceed that of what it costs to just do a composite deck from day one. So with a composite deck, there's so many possibilities out there for materials, railings, the deck boards themselves, designs. And so the prices can range a lot depending on what the materials are that you select. Right here we have an aluminum rail, kind of as an example. There's aluminum rails, composite rails. We get asked a lot about cable railing and even glass panels. There's a few of those out there. So railing varies wildly from panel to panel. So a basic aluminum rail would probably run just under $200 per section for material cost. Basic composite is usually about $140 or $150 per section, and then cable railing can be as much as $500 or $600 a section, and then glass is even more than that. So just to give you a gauge, what the different things cost. Composite's going to be the most basic, then aluminum's going to be a little more, and then some of your fancier options like stainless steel cable or stainless steel wire mesh. Those can be quite a bit more than that. As far as deck boards go, every manufacturer has a good, better, best option. We're Trex certified here at Property Revolution. We've done certification courses and can extend some of Trex's warranties on each project. And so we typically use Trex deck boards. They work really well. They've performed really well for us over the last few years. So when you're looking at the options in Trex, just as a gauge again to kind of give you an idea of the scope of cost, a basic deck board in composite might be in like $32 per board, which really isn't that much more than lumber. And then the mid-range boards can be like $50 or $60 each, and some of the higher end ones can be as much as $100 per deck board. So that's just to give you an idea as to the scope of what material can influence the cost of a deck. So I would say if you're trying to prepare a budget for your deck project, you should expect to spend $30 to possibly $100 per square foot, depending on the materials that you select. So if you do a real basic wood deck, those are probably running about $30-something a square foot right now. And then composite's going to start out at about $60 a square foot and go up from there. Again, if you pick higher end materials, the cost could go even farther. And then another thing to consider with deck projects that influences the cost is the shape and design. So rectangles and squares in 2-foot increments are going to be the most economical and cost effective. And so for people who want to get the best bang for their buck, I always recommend building in increments of like 12, 16, and 20, because that's the lengths that all the materials come in, and then we're not wasting material. The cost to build an 11 by 15 would be the same cost as a 12 by 16 because the material is exactly the same. So squares and rectangles are going to be more economical, and then basic designs are also going to be more economical. And then if you want something like what's called a herringbone pattern, or picture framing, or a kind of a fancier design on the stairs, all of those things are going to influence the cost a little bit more. One other thing that does influence the cost of the deck is the height. So ground level decks are going to be more in that beginning price range that I mentioned of 30 something or 60 something dollars a square foot. And then as they get taller, they become more complicated to build, thicker posts are required. And so the prices can go up a little bit for taller decks. And then obviously there's a larger amount of stairs involved for taller projects too. One other thing that can influence the cost and ought to be considered that's becoming really popular is lighting. So this year especially, we've started diving into built-in lighting kits for decks. There's quite a few different options. There's post cap lights, there's post side lights, and then there's lights that we install in the deck boards themselves. Those are the most common. They're called puck lights. And so lighting can really set your deck off, make it look really cool, and really isn't that much of an add-on in the scheme of things. And so those are the things that you're going to want to think through for planning your deck project. If you would like an exact price from our company, we'd be happy to have someone come out. We'd sit down with you for a few minutes, ask what your ideas are. We typically quote at least 3 different options so that you can see what different scenarios might look like. And then we can put your proposal together from there. So if you want to see what that would look like for us to build your deck, feel free to reach out to us and we'd be happy to help.